The Bloemfontein High Court has dismissed with costs Nandipha Magudumana's urgent application to have her arrest in Tanzania declared unlawful. Linda Mnisi is at the Bloemfontein High Court for us, and he joins us as you're standing by to speak to the NPA. Good afternoon, Linda.
Good afternoon, Dudu. Indeed, we'll be getting reaction from the National Prosecuting Authority at the backdrop of that dismissal by the court, the Free State High Court, dismissing Dr Nandipha Magudumana's application with costs, primarily because, she consented to being brought back to South Africa. Quite interesting is that the court not denying the fact that this was an extradition disguised as a deportation. The NPA on standby right now. We've heard from a number of parties, including, her lawyers, saying that they've made note of the judgment and await instructions from Dr Nandipha herself on what to do next. It seems this might not be the end of the road for her. This is an application that basically affirmed that the process of bringing her back to South Africa was not what the police and the authorities have been telling us all along, and that in fact it agrees, this court agreeing with Dr Nandipha in that, that process was in fact an extradition which requires totally different processes to be followed when you look into what needs to happen. I want us to take a listen at the moment, to what the NPA will say about this particular court ruling.
In terms of the NPA's reaction to this judgment. All right, let's bring in the NPA.
Well,
now.
We welcome the judgment of the High Court that is in favor of the state. What we're hoping is that from now we'll be given enough space so that we can do what is expected of us as prosecutors and investigators to ensure that justice prevails.
There could be a possibility. Well, at this particular stage, we understand Dr Nandipha Magudumana's lawyers will be consulting with her. They're not ruling out the possibility of an appeal in Pheladi Shuping. One of the key aspects of Dr Nandipha Magudumana's argument was that what happened in Tanzania was not a deportation, but an extradition. And this court has now agreed with that. Your response to that?
Well, we're not going to concern ourselves of anything that's a possibility. Until such time that there is an appeal, it's only then that we'll respond, because once they appeal, they will bring papers that as prosecutors we will have to respond to. But I think the judgment speaks for itself in that at the end the High Court dismissed the application of the applicant.
Surely it's damning that the court finds that she was right. It was an extradition.
Well, what we welcoming from our side as NPA is that even if there are concerns that were raised by the High Court, but at the end of the day, the decision that was given by the court in terms of the judgment is the decision that the application should be dismissed, and the application was as such dismissed.
Lastly then, Mr. Shuping, in terms of the legal proceedings against Dr Nandipha in the Magistrates Court, could we possibly see any further charges added? You did, as the NPA, provisionally withdraw the murder charges.
We have said it before in that once there is an investigative process underway, everything is a possibility. There's a possibility of more people being charged, and there are charges. There's a possibility of some charges being added against the accused, but that will depend on the investigation that once it has been finalized.
All right, and there's no concern around whether this judgment will impact what unfolds in the Magistrates Court?
No, definitely not.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, Pheladi Shuping, there is the NPA spokesperson here in the Free State, giving us their reaction, at least welcoming the ruling that was made by this court that in fact dismisses Dr Nandipha Magudumana's application, which sought to declare her arrest and ultimate deportation and detention, to be unlawful. You'll remember to do that, that's what she wanted. If this court found that her arrest was unlawful and that her detention subsequently is unlawful, she also sought that it basically does away or nullifies the proceedings that are before the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court. And what Pheladi Shuping is telling us now is that this ruling or the proceedings in this court will not in any way affect, the proceedings in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court. So the main matter essentially still stands there. Her matter was postponed to the 20th of June. So on the 20th of June, then she will be back in court facing the fraud charges as well as violation of a corpse, amongst others, at the Bloemfontein High Magistrates Court. On the sidelines, it's still unclear, of course, in terms of what exactly she'll be doing. If we still have time, I want us to take a listen to what the judge made of the fact that the state submitted that she wanted to come back to South Africa. In fact, she told officials that she wanted to be with her children. Let's take a listen.
In the present case, I have no hesitation in finding that the applicant was well aware at the time of her handing over of the charges that could be levelled against her upon her arrival in South Africa. She nevertheless consented to her removal from Tanzania to South Africa because she wanted to be with her children. At the very least, she had willingly acquiesced to her transportation back to South Africa.
All right, so that's Judge Philip Lobser there, remarking, of course, on the issue around her consenting to coming back to South Africa. We also got reaction from Katlego Bereng's aunt. You'll remember they've been following these proceedings quite closely and were against this application. Let's take a listen to what they have to say.
Newzroom of the South African High Commission in Tanzania says in her supporting affidavit in the papers of the Minister of Home Affairs that the first Secretary of the High Commission was informed on 11 April 2023 by Tanzanian authorities in Arusha that it was decided by Tanzania to declare Bester and the applicant prohibited immigrants and liable to be deported back to their country of origin, South Africa. But she then mentions that, and I quote, the agreement between Tanzanian authorities and the High Commission to deport them back to South Africa was reached at the premises of the High Commissioner, unquote. These two statements by Moreng obviously contradict each other because it cannot be, on the one hand, that Tanzania had decided to deport them, and on the other hand, that there was an agreement between the two countries that they should be deported. She also does not inform when this agreement was concluded and who were present when it was concluded. The result is that this court cannot rely on her evidence in this regard.
All right, so the next time we'll see Dr Nandipha Magudumana will be in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court, where the main matter will continue. That's, of course, if nothing else comes up between now and then.
Mnisi, thank you very much for that report.